Committee meeting and call it to order. If we could have the roll, Ms. Talbot?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I could do it. Mr. Jenks?
Here.
Mr. Slocum?
Here.
Mr. Borrowy? We have a quorum, 100% attendance of the Budget Committee. Move right on, we'll skip Pledge of Allegiance because we'll be doing it in a few minutes and the mayor leads us at the council meeting. So if I could have consideration of items 3 through 11, which are very generous gifts from our community to our fellow community members. Would someone like to move?
So
those?
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Slocum moves the recommendation. Mr. Jenks seconds. Any questions on any of these?
The
Seeing
dog
none,
park,
What's that?
sorry, the dog park, those are gifts
Those are gifts.
from an anonymous donor or something? Or-
No, there was a fund there was money raised through a GoFundMe that was then given to the park's gift account for
Okay,
the purpose of replacing one of them now right away, and then the second one will be replaced.
that's great.
Because they're getting funds for that as well. Which is very nice of them. The others were destroyed because of use,
Right.
I guess, the wind. Yeah, so that's great. That's a very much used park. Are there any questions or any explanations? Sensing ready to vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimous. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moves
Second.
second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Budget Committee is adjourned. Mr. Mayor, you're ready for the council meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Barr. I appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for attending tonight. I think we're all very, very happy to be semi-live tonight. It'd be a little bit better if we could have the public here tonight, but nonetheless, we are here as a group and we are able to teleconference people in if they have public comments. So we're excited that we're at least getting closer to our normalcy, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get to full normalcy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and call this town council meeting to order at approximately 7:05 PM, Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. With that, Ms. Talbot, can you please do the roll call?
Mr. Jinks,
Here.
Mr. Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Borrowy,
Present.
Mr. Belliver,
Here.
Mr. Slocum,
Here.
Mr. Chairman Orris,
Here.
Ms. Nichols.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Ms. Pavano.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Talbot. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started tonight, I want to, on behalf of the entire town council and our community, send our condolences out to Mike Winter's family. We recently heard of his passing. As most of you know, Mike is a longtime employee of the town of Cheshire, served 31 years, I believe, or approximately 31 years, serving as a dispatcher since 1989. He was appointed technology coordinator in 2005 and also served as the president of the Dispatchers Union. And it's really, really sad news to hear of Mike's passing. Obviously, it was sudden, nothing anyone expected from what I know. And I want to make sure that his family and all of the Cheshire Police Department family knows that we're standing with them. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of them, and this is a very sad day for Cheshire. So if we can maybe we do a moment of silence on behalf of Mike would be great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And again, our condolences out to Mike's family. And Chief Drife, I know you're here tonight. Same to you and all of your staff. I know it was a tough call for you to respond to, and certainly send our condolences to all those in your department as well. So thank you, Chief. Okay, and with that, we're going to, first item is items for executive session, which includes contract negotiations and labor negotiations. We're going to move that to the end of our agenda. And we'll move on to public communications. Ms. Talbot, do we have anyone for any public communications?
We have no comments in the email, and we have no one waiting to come in on the Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Talbot. And hopefully, as the public starts to understand, if we're doing these kinds of meetings going forward, that there is an opportunity to engage with the council in somewhat of a more personal manner than just sending an email in. You can certainly log in through Zoom, I believe, and we can correspond in at least with a picture and see you somewhat live. So going forward, hopefully more people partake in that. And with that, we'll move on to approval of minutes of the regular meeting of August 18, 2020, special meetings of August 11th, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any questions or comments on the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Mr. Barry.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 090820-1. Be it resolved, the town council approves the consent calendar for September 8, 2020 as follows, and there are very generous gifts, as our community always has been, to help others in need in the community and other quality of life issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barr. As always, thank you to the public for your generous donations. Are there any questions or comments on the consent calendar from members of the council?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we need a second. Thank you, Mr. Veliver.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I didn't see Mr. Jinks. My apologies, Jim. But I think we got a second from Mr. Veliver, correct? And with that, if there are no other questions or comments regarding the consent calendar, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to new business, and we only have a couple of items, so we do have a short agenda tonight. And the first item is a call for public hearing to consider an amendment to extend the unsafe premises ordinance. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 090820-2. Be it resolved, the town council calls for a public hearing to consider an amendment to the unsafe premises ordinance, section 3-41 sunset provision to extend the ordinance for 2 years to September 30, 2022. Be it further resolved, the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to law. And be it further resolved that the date, time, and place of any postponement thereof shall be determined by the town manager with the approval of the chairman of the council.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been an ordinance that was passed a few years ago to help with some of the issues facing the town on some premises that have been where they've had issues with unsafe situations at the property. And the former, assistant fire marshal and John Andrews had, in his role as also as the sort of unsafe premises enforcement officer, had said this has been a successful tool and arrow in his quiver, tool in the toolbox to help address some issues that he faced in his role. And I assume that this is also something that we want to continue to look at. It's amazing with the this is something that's in the ordinance committee to be reviewed and potentially updated. But obviously, due to COVID, it's been those meetings have been sort of postponed a little bit, but it is something that we are looking at picking up again and addressing. But it is an important resolution and an important ordinance, and one that we would like to keep available to the town of Cheshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. And as you all know, this is just calling for the public hearing, so we'll all have more information on this. This is just to alert the public that there will be a public forum for them to weigh in on the extension of this. Since there was a sunset provision, we want to make sure we extend it, and then potentially you're going to modify it down the road if you see fit. So with that, I don't think there's any questions or comments on this. I'll just call for a vote to open to call for the public hearing. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to the second item of new business, which is possible discussion regarding the School Modernization Committee appointments. Ms. Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on the School Modernization Committee for those of you who have not been staying along with us. Last meeting, we appointed Kate O'Donnell to fill the vacancy of Anne Marie Kemp, who had resigned. And following that, we received the resignation of Peter Talbot as the council representative. And so tonight we will be proposing a replacement for Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. There's really nothing to vote on here, but I wanted to make sure it was on the agenda. I know that some council members had hoped that we could discuss some matters on this potentially, and I'm not sure if any council members wants to at this point, but this would certainly be the opportunity to discuss any issues relative to the School Modernization Committee. So, Mr. Jinks, I know you had sent a proposal a number of months ago, potentially. I don't know if that's still on your radar and whether it's something you still want to address, but certainly this is the forum to discuss some of these things at this point.
Yeah, I just, as a way of, first of all, I think, we all want to obviously get the School Modernization Committee back to, back to the way it was operating before and back to having regular meetings and making progress in the schools. So as a way of the way of doing that is a way of sort of, someone used the term healing at some point as a way of kind of starting some healing. My suggestion was to, add members of the public, 2 female members, obviously since we're a little short in terms of the gender mix. That's kind of where I am right now. The other part of my suggestion had to do with removing some members, but, really, I'd rather have a larger discussion about maybe adding members to the committee from the public to create a bit more gender balance and just have more voices from the public on the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Any other comments from any members of the council on this matter? Yes, Mr. Barry?
I appreciate the thoughtfulness that your proposal had, but to be honest with you, I think a committee of that size is rather large enough. I don't think we need to add any members on that personally. It's my thought. I think it can become unwieldy and difficult to work with. And quite frankly, I don't think it's a good idea to undo the elected officials and say, well, we don't need as many elected officials, because the 2 bodies who are represented on there, the Board of Ed and the Town Council, are the ones that need to make the decision anyway. I think the fact that it's a majority public citizens is great, but I think there does need to be input from the 2 elected bodies who have the responsibility to make the decisions as to whether projects go forward or not.
Yeah, can I just respond?
Of course, absolutely.
I guess I'm more or less kind of withdrawing the notion of removing 1 member of the Board of Ed, 1 member of the council, like I initially suggested. I'm more interested in seeing us add members of the public, and those, given that it's relatively short in terms of women, that we add 2 women. That's the simple suggestion. I don't think it is a relatively large commission, but there's, a number of different subcommittees. There's, it's not too large if we add 2 members of the public, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Thank you, Mr. Barry. Any other thoughts or comments from members of the council? Ms. Nichols?
I'd just like to respond to you, Jim, and I appreciate it. We did not ignore your thoughts. The interest here, I believe, and I can speak for the council, was to get the seats filled as quickly as we can to at least begin a process. I think some of your suggestions have been very good, but I think perhaps that's a conversation that the committee can have to see what would best work for the committee. I think it is large now, but I think there are spaces for subcommittee chairs or other people that we could include there. So keep those thoughts. But for the moment, I think it's imperative that we don't lose the momentum that we had, and we keep moving forward with the committee as it was set up to be at the beginning. But certainly any comments are welcome, but I think the committee needs to figure out if they can function, and that would be where those suggestions should start.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum?
This may be a little off topic and perhaps it could be brought up later, but to keep it on track is also to inform me, I suppose, of what's going on with that committee. And I wonder if the council can anticipate some type of a report. Again, I followed some of their meetings on Zoom. It's not to state that, I'm not paying somewhat of attention, but if there are any details, I think it would be interesting for the council to at least be prepared for an update soon from the committee, because obviously they could come before us in one form or another and indicate that, we've made this much progress, but there's this much to do. We're not sure. I think we could use that update.
I agree with you. I think that we get it as a committee, and we see the timeline for the paid professionals. They're giving us advice and so forth. And perhaps that has not come directly to you, but it should, or one of us, Don or I or Jim, should come back to you with a regular report as to what happens. I believe, if I'm correct, the next meeting is next Wednesday evening. So we should have an update for you for the following council meeting.
I think that would be
Yeah.
ideal.
Okay, can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any other thoughts or comments from members of the council? Okay, I guess what I would say is that if this group decides that there should be some modification of that group, it's this body's decision to do so. And if there's a resolution that someone wants to put on the table at the appropriate time, they certainly can go ahead and do so. At this moment, we don't have anything here to address. So we've had a brief discussion. We can certainly continue the discussion. The only reservation I would have is that, the longer we go, the committee is getting closer to its date. that we are looking for some work to come back to us on. And I don't know if, at what point can you still add people and they can kind of catch up with the work that's been done already. I think that's probably a little bit of an issue, but since this SMC issue came to bear, I have stayed out of any decisions relative to the SMC, and I will continue to do so. So I leave this decision in the rest of the council members' hands. I normally don't like to do that, but there's been a lot of, in my opinion, false accusations cast at me relative to my limited involvement of that situation. And I've defended myself in one occasion, and I've continued to have multiple attacks, which I believe are false. And I think that we need to work on what we are elected to, people's business. And that's really what I want to focus on. So if you all think that it's in the best interest of that committee to add more people, I'm certainly willing to give it its time here for deliberation and vote. I will not vote on it because since that incident, I am staying out of it. I have been accused of choreographing the decision that this group made relative to Mr. Bowman's situation, relative to staying on the committee or not. As all of you know, I stayed completely out of it. I don't think anyone has said that necessarily other than Mr. Walsh, but nonetheless, there's a lot of false information out there, and I will not continue to participate in it. And I will acquiesce to the rest of the group relative to decisions on the SMC going forward at this point. So with that, I'll let you guys decide where and when you want to address this remodification of this committee, if it's something you all choose to do. With that, I'm going to move on to the town manager report and communications. Mr. Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be relatively brief. My last update was only about 3 weeks ago, given the delay from our last meeting from following the storm. So I will start, though, and remind folks that this upcoming weekend, the Cheshire Fall Festival fireworks, although obviously the Fall Festival is not going to be happening this year, the fireworks are going to be proceeding on Saturday evening, September 12th at Bartlam Park. Consistent with DECD sector guidelines, the on-field space will be limited to 500 people with appropriate social distancing markers, and masks should be worn at the entrance. The field will be open at 6 p.m. and the fireworks will begin at dusk. There will be no food or beverages sold, but attendees can bring their own picnic dinner. And the rain date is Sunday, September 13th. And again, you can see these fireworks, as everyone well knows, from multiple locations. So we hope we have a good night, and we hope folks turn out to come watch. Just an update on the storm debris collection that the town council approved last month. Crews are about over 50% complete with the townwide debris collection. Just as a reminder, the crews began in the south end, are making one pass through town, working their way north. Brush and branches of 8 inches diameter or less will be collected. Leaves, grass, clippings, bulky waste, bags, trash will not be picked up. All material must be placed curbside on a town or state road, and crews cannot enter private driveways or condominium complexes. The town did extend the self-service drop-off location, which is the old transfer station at 1304 Waterbury Road, through September 12th. This location is open Monday through Saturday, 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Again, another reminder, this is the last month now with the extension for the due date for tax bills. They were mailed at the end of June, and residents were reminded that the council did adopt the 60-day extension per the option made available by the governor's executive orders. The deadline for tax bills to be considered late now is October 1st, 2020. Taxpayers are encouraged to pay online, by mail, or use the drive-up payment box located in the circle of Town Hall parking lot to help with social distancing. But we are also, as we've said many times, open for business if folks want to come pay here in Town Hall. Just an update on our expansion of services plan, specifically the Cheshire Public Library. The library is preparing to welcome patrons back into the building on a limited basis for phase 2 of the reopening plan. Patrons will have access to the library for several hours a day, and the number of visitors will be limited to ensure social distancing. Face coverings that cover the mouth and nose are required, and no food or drink will be allowed. Necessary accommodations have been made for the safety of patrons and staff. Some tables and seating have been removed, as have high-touch objects that are shared, such as puzzles and toys. Spacing and traffic flow has been organized and marked, and plexiglass dividers have been installed, and compliant cleaning protocols have been implemented. During this phase, restrooms and several other areas will be closed to the public, and on-site programming and meetings will not be held. Popular Grab and Go curbside service will continue, as other successful programs and services developed by the library in response to the pandemic. The reopening date and hours for public access will be announced very soon. Just a quick welcome to our new Cheshire Police Department officers. I'm pleased to announce we'll be swearing in 2 new officers later this week. Alex Wells and Tony Francois will be joining the men and women of the Cheshire Police Department. Alex is currently our Assistant Animal Control Officer, and Tony comes to us from New York, having graduated earlier this year from the University of New Haven with a degree in criminal justice. And just to reiterate what Chairman Orris said earlier, unfortunately, yesterday we lost current town employee Michael Winters, again, a longtime employee who served as our technology coordinator for the police department and began his career here as a dispatcher. During his 31 years working for the town, he was a respected and invaluable member of the department, a wonderful friend and colleague to many, and he will be greatly missed. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimball. Any questions or comments? Mr. Bowery?
Just a question, if I could. With the tax bills, I know we had projections and expectations as to revenue and the timing of the revenue with the change and all. Are we getting revenue as expected? I know mortgage companies had to pay, but we didn't know what the mix would be.
Yeah, all I could tell you is in general, the payments came in a lot sooner than even in our
expected.
projections.
Good.
Almost to the point where it's almost like we didn't offer the program. Our collections are right about where they normally are at this time of year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Yes, Mr. Walsh?
I want to thank George Malotny and town staff and put the map up of the debris pickup. I think it's been very useful for the town. I think the knowing how far behind they are so that they can get all their debris out, I think it's been a big help. I've heard from a number of people who really appreciate that. So I want to thank you for keeping that map up to date, and it does come in handy. And opening the debris, letting the debris still be dropped off at the transfer station since that second storm that we had, I think was a great idea too. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Veliver?
Thank you. And Don, I echo your thoughts on the debris pickup. I thought it's been a great source. They've done a great job and keeping that list. I know I got a lot of questions from people saying, where are they? When are they going to get to my street? And I would be able to refer them to that map. And it gave them a pretty good indication as to how much time do I have before they're getting to my house, and I can make sure I get all my stuff out. So thank you also for doing that. My question for Sean and/or Chief Drife, with these new officers, could you just give, over the last year or so, how many officers have we brought into the police force? How many are new officers? How is that? Would you say it changed over the last year? Because we seem to have a lot of reports. We're bringing in officers, which is great to bring in somebody. And it seems like how many officers have we that are new?
In the past year, let's see, we haven't had a swearing-in ceremony.
So in the past, say, calendar year, it's about this time next year where we hired 2. They started the police academy. They graduated in January. That's Officer Mary Claffey and Officer Christopher Sheehan. Shortly after that, we had an additional officer, Aiden Kiley, who started the police academy in Waterbury. He graduated in March. Unfortunately, he unexpectedly resigned his position in May. And then, as you're all aware, Deputy Chief Pignarczyk retired in just 2 weeks ago. So the 2 officers that were swearing in on Thursday will be replacements for them. But so the officer who was only here for a short time, not really a big experience loss there, but we're trading in 31 years of police experience, town experience, 26 of it as a sworn police officer, 5 as a dispatcher, with the deputy chief for a 22-year-old young man who graduated from UNH in May. So there'll be a learning curve there before he's fully up to speed. But it's kind of the nature of the beast, so to speak.
Great. Well, thank you. I just wanted to get a feel for how that's turned over. Are we at what we have set as the number of police officers, or do we still have spots to fill?
Bearing in mind that there's a frozen position
Right.
this fiscal year.
Right.
We will be on Thursday at about 2:15 or so when Judge Jalowitz has them raise their hand. We'll be at 47 again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report on my left, Ms. Nichols.
Only that personnel continues to meet. We have a personnel meeting scheduled for next, the 15th. So we will pursue our ongoing personnel issues.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum.
Planning has scheduled a meeting for tomorrow, actually, to review submittals that go all the way back to March, delayed only because of COVID, to be quite honest, for town attorney services, an RFP that had been put out. So we'll be discussing that, as we will also be discussing the poet laureate situation. I don't want to call it a situation. Item.
As you know, I have two referrals to you, to the planning committee shortly. So thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Veliver?
Thank you very much. As mentioned, the Ordinance Review Committee will be meeting on the 16th and to pick up further discussion that unfortunately, due to COVID, have been not able to get to. But there are many things on the agenda for the Ordinance Review Committee, and we'll be taking those up.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Mr. Barwe?
We met earlier as a budget committee, but I'll take this opportunity to remind everybody that we finished our capital budget work early, and there are questions on the referendum on spending items. So as you're filling out your ballot, everybody please remember that there are questions that have big impact locally, road work and others. So please make sure that when you're filling out your ballot, you remember those.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Barwe. Mr. Walsh?
No report from the Solid Waste Committee.
Right. Thank you. I think Ms. Pavano?
Yes, I'm on the negotiating committee for the Board of Education for the teacher's contract. We have met twice. I believe we will be meeting probably 2 more times. We are making some headway.
Okay, thanks.
I did talk to Dr. Sullivan. He said the orientation is in the next few days. Has been going very well.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Fun. But that's as your liaison position, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And with that, I know I have 2 referrals. I have consideration of the poet laureate, which we're referring to the planning committee, and then also the review of the AARP Livable Communities Program, also to the planning committee. With that, we're going to move on to miscellaneous and appointments, liaison reports. Starting on my left, Ms. Nichols.
I have a resolution here. I have an appointment back to the School Modernization Committee. So I would like to put this forth. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 0908203. Be it resolved that the Town Council appoints Counselor Jim Jinks as a council representative member of the School Modernization Committee to fill the vacancy of Peter Talbot.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And with that, Ms. Nichols, I guess?
Yeah, there's not really a lot of discussion. We are obligated to have 3 members of the council represented on the School Modernization Committee. And since I am one and Don is the other, we'd like Jim to be the 3rd one. And anybody have any comments on that? That's how the committee is set up. So we welcome him to be a member of that committee.
I think it's terrific.
And with that, I'll call for a vote. Obviously, we're a little out of order. We were doing liaison reports, but nonetheless, it's in the same
Oh, sorry.
categories. No problem, Ms. Nichols. No problem at all. I've been doing the same myself all night.
reports.
No, but I just want the public who's following the agenda to
Right.
understand that, we're a little out of order, but we're in the same category. But since we have a
Sorry,
motion on the table, we'll certainly call for a vote. With that, all in favor of Mr. Jinks replacing Mr. Talbot on SMC? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
And no, I don't have a liaison report.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Mr. Slocum.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver.
No report.
Mr. Barry. Mr. Talbot.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jinks.
No report.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I have a report. Cheshire Housing Authority met on August 26th. They pleased to announce that Beachport is at 100% occupied. Foot Commons just has a 2-bedroom unit that will be vacant as of September 1st. Affordable housing is at 100% occupied as well. They did have several trees that fell during the storm that were cleaned up. And they're working on some beautification ideas to make Beachport a little bit more appealing to the residents and to the people who go there. So they're working hard.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Pavano. I know you gave one a minute ago. No apology necessary. I'm going through the same gyrations. It's
Yes,
tough to get back in the swing of things since
know.
we're
We'll
doing
get
so
it.
many different kind of locations and how we're managing this. So I'm sure the public understands that we're a little out of sorts, just as we are as a community with COVID and everything else going on. We as a council, unfortunately, are a bit out of sorts as well, folks. So, I hope you understand that we're doing the best we can as volunteers to continue to do all the work that's important to run this community. So thank you, Ms. Pavano. No apology necessary. And with that, we're going to move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Ms. Nichols, do you have any?
I do not.
Mr. Talbot?
I do not.
Thank you. And we already did the appointment to fill the vacancy on the School Modernization Committee. And I would be remiss if I didn't say once again, though, I am disappointed, Mr. Talbot. I know your reasoning for it, and I respect that. But nonetheless, I am disappointed that you're no longer on the SMC. I think you were a valuable member, and I'm sorry that unfortunately that incident resulted in this resignation because I think the committee is losing a very good person on that committee, and I want to make sure you know that. You're welcome. With that, I'll move on to the town attorney report and communications. Mr. Smith, no report. Council communications, letters to the council. I do have one, and I'll read it as always. To the town council, I watched the August 3rd SMC meeting and was impressed with Ms. Bates and Harrigan as they described calmly the breach in trust. Not impressed with Matt Bowman's non-apology. How is he sorry when he won't even say what it was that he thought idiotic? Without an explanation, the members naturally conclude that his outburst was a general disdain for their work. Confused as Rob Orris denied he said what others heard him say. Astonished that Mr. Perugini and Walsh blamed the chair for doing what they agreed she should do. Of course, Mr. Bowman brings a lot to the table, but at this time, he is also bringing a disdain for the women on the committee. How can this be good for them working together? Is there no one else in the town who could offer their expertise? It seems the town council is protecting their own members while stymieing the SMC work. This is not good governance. Diane Visconti, August 19th, 2020. Are there any other letters to the council or correspondence from members of the council? Seeing none. And with that, I'm going to go back to the items for executive session, which are contract negotiations and labor negotiations to include our town manager, our assistant town manager, our town attorney, Mr. Jascott, Chief Drife, Mr. Zullo. Is there anyone I'm missing, Mr. Kimball? Okay, so with that, I'd like a motion to go into executive session for those reasons. Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Velder. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Jenks. All in favor? Motion passed unanimously. So I'd like to just say goodnight to the public at this point. The only item left is executive session. When we come out, the only matter before us will be to adjourn the meeting. So thank you to those who have watched, and we look forward to interacting with you in the future. Good night.